Hi everyone, and welcome back to my kitchen. Easter is just around the corner, and today I wanted to share with you guys my family recipe for traditional Russian Easter bread. In Russian, it's called Kulich Pасхальный. This incredible sweet bread is dotted with dried fruit and then glazed with a simple sugar glaze. Today I'm going to be using apricots and cranberries, but you can find it with so many different types of fruit. You guys are going to love this bread. It's so incredibly buttery and soft and flaky and delicious. It is the perfect way to celebrate Easter. Now, I have this recipe in my newest cookbook, Beyond Borscht. This cookbook is just a treasure trove of all my favorite childhood recipes from Russian and the Ukrainian cuisine. You guys are going to love it. I'm going to include the order links for this cookbook down in the video description box below, along with the recipe. Meanwhile, let's get started. I'm going to show you how to make this incredible bread. And I'm going to start this delicious yeast bread off by heating the milk first, and I usually heat it between 120 and 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Anything hotter will kill the yeast, and anything colder, it won't activate the yeast properly. So make sure the milk is at a perfect temperature. And I'll pour my milk into a large mixing bowl, and then sprinkle 1 tablespoon of active yeast over the top, and we're going to just let this sit for about 5 minutes. And after letting the yeast stand for about 5 minutes, I'm ready to add my next ingredients. So I have 3/4 cups of melted butter. I melted this in the microwave and then let it cool down a little bit because you don't want it to be too hot. I'll pour it into the milk. And we're going to add in 1 cup of white granulated sugar. Next up, we have 1/3 cup of sour cream, 2 eggs plus 2 egg yolks, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to whisk this all together for a couple minutes until this mixture is smooth and the eggs are well beaten. And at this point, I am ready to start adding my flour. So I've measured out 5 2/3 cup of all-purpose flour, and I'm going to add approximately 2 cups of flour to start with, and then we'll add the rest of it later. And it doesn't have to be the exact 2 cups. Drop that in. And I'm going to whisk in the flour until the mixture is nice and smooth. And now I'm ready for the first proofing stage. So I have filled a large pot with hot but not boiling water, filled it about 2/3 of the way full, and I'm going to place my bowl with the bread batter right on top. You want to make sure that the bottom is not touching the hot water, and I'm going to cover it with a clean dinner napkin, and I'll place it into a warm corner of my kitchen for about an hour, hour and a half, until it's doubled up in size, and then we'll come back to add the rest of the flour later. While this is proofing, you could switch the water out about halfway through to make sure that it stays nice and warm. And while my batter is proofing, I'm going to prepare my dried fruits. So you need 1 cup of dried fruit. Today I'm using 1/2 cup of diced dried apricots, and I have 1/2 cup of dried cranberries. You can also use raisins, golden raisins, whatever type of dried fruit you'd like. I'm going to soak the fruit with a little bit of warm water. Just pour it over the top. And by moistening the dried fruit, we're going to help add moisture into the bread. It's going to taste so incredibly delicious. And I've let my batter proof for about an hour and a half, and now I'm ready to add the rest of my flour. So I'm going to add in about 1 cup at a time, sprinkle it in. I'm going to start with my whisk first, and then I'll switch over to my spatula. And once my dough starts to come together into a ball, I'm going to transfer onto my work surface. And I'm going to keep some extra flour on the side and start kneading the dough. So I usually knead for about 4 to 5 minutes, so until the dough is really smooth and elastic. And then you could just sprinkle on a little extra flour as needed. And this is such a buttery and smooth kind of dough. You'll notice I only added a little bit of flour right at the beginning when I first started kneading the dough. But after that, once the dough starts to come together, you're kneading it, the butter actually lubricates your kitchen counter, your work surface, so you don't need extra flour. You want the dough to stay really nice and soft and buttery. I have my Easter bread dough kneaded. It's so smooth and elastic. And now let's talk about adding the fruit. So I let the apricots and the cranberries stand in the warm water just until now, and I drained some water. The apricots had a little bit of water left, the cranberries had a little bit more, but that water is just going to add extra moisture into the bread, and as it bakes, it's going to release it into the dough. It's going to be absolutely incredible. So make sure you drain all the extra liquids out of the dough. And now we're going to add the dried fruit. I kind of like stretch my dough out into a little square, and then we could drop that fruit inside and knead it in. All right, add on the apricots and the cranberries. And I'll gently fold the dough over and continue kneading this. And once I add the fruit in there, I knead it for about a minute just to make sure that that fruit is evenly distributed. And I'm going to roll this dough into a log, and I'm going to split it evenly into 3 pieces. And I actually like to use a kitchen scale just to make sure that all 3 loaves weigh approximately the same size. And I'm going to knead each section of dough into a nice and smooth ball. And check out these really pretty Russian paper molds that I found on Amazon. These are going to be so perfect for Easter. I'm going to include the link down in the video description box below. And now I'm just going to drop the dough right into the paper mold. Make sure it's nicely evenly settled into the bottom. And my Easter bread is ready for its second proofing, and I'm going to do that in the oven. What I did was I filled a large casserole pan with some boiling water, and I placed it on the bottom of my oven. I'm going to place my Easter bread on my middle rack, close the oven door, and let it proof for about 1.5 hours to 2 hours until this dough has doubled up in size. And I'm going to change out that water about halfway through to make sure that my oven stays warm and moist. And after 2 hours, my bread has proofed so nicely in the oven. I've taken it out of the oven while I'm getting it preheated. And I'm preheating my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and this Easter bread is going to bake for approximately 45 minutes until it's a rich golden brown color on the top. While this bread is baking in the oven, I'm going to show you guys how to make a simple traditional glaze for the bread. And for my sugar glaze, I have 3 large egg whites. It's about 3 ounces of egg whites. And I'm going to begin by adding about 1/2 cup of my confectioner sugar. You'll need about 3.5 to 4 cups of sugar. And I'm going to grab my hand mixer and start mixing. And as I'm mixing, I'm going to continually and slowly add in the remaining powdered sugar. And you want to just keep mixing it. And once you've added in all the sugar, you're going to have this incredible thick glaze. This is actually called a royal icing. Now, if you find that your glaze is too thick, you can actually add a couple drops of water to thin out the glaze. And then to apply the icing, you want to wait for your bread to cool a little bit, and then remove the paper mold if you want the icing to go down the sides of the bread, and then just drop a big spoonful on top. And then just spread it out, and it's going to kind of go down the sides by itself. And for a very traditional Russian finish, I'm going to sprinkle on some colorful confetti on top. And I want to cut it into one of these loaves so you guys can see what this bread looks like on the inside. And Easter bread is all about the texture and the fluffiness and the moist inside of this bread. Check that out. This bread is just so buttery and delicate on the inside, dotted with little pieces of the apricot and the dried cranberry. This is going to be so incredibly delicious. This bread is just so soft and flaky and absolutely delicious. Even when it's a little bit warm still, check out that texture. It's just really flaky and buttery. And that's it for my traditional Russian Easter bread. I absolutely love baking this bread every year. It is a yearly tradition. It just fills my whole home with the most incredible warming, like yeast bread aroma. You guys are going to love the aroma and the flavors of this bread. For the full recipe, don't forget to head on down in the video description box. I'll have order links for my cookbook Beyond Borscht, and I'll have all the ingredients down there as well. This recipe is so incredibly delicious. I can't wait to enjoy some of this bread. It is just so light and flaky and buttery, and I love the addition of the dried fruit pieces in there. I absolutely love this bread while it's still warm and soft out of the oven. It's so incredibly delicious, especially with a cup of some hot tea or coffee. You guys are going to love this recipe for traditional Easter bread. It is so incredibly delicious and worth every single minute that it takes to mix and let the dough proof and let the bread bake. It is just worth the effort. Let me tell you, the texture, it's just so buttery and flaky and rich. I love the little bits of the dried fruit in there. They add like this little pop of fruitiness into every single bite. Now, I do like to make a couple pieces without the glaze and then some with the glaze. My husband doesn't like the glaze. I like the glaze. Just a personal preference. If you've never made Russian Easter bread before, you've never had it before, I recommend leaving at least one loaf unglazed, just so that you can decide for yourself which way that you prefer this. And I do recommend enjoying this bread the same day or the next day, because after like day 2, 3, the bread starts to dry out and it kind of loses that rich buttery kind of texture and flavor of it. So I'm actually going to let this bread cool completely, and then I'll wrap it with some plastic wrap and keep it at room temperature. It's going to be gone by the end of tomorrow, I guarantee you. Thank you so much for watching today's traditional Russian recipe. I hope you guys enjoy this incredible Easter bread at home for your Easter celebration this year, and I'll see you next time with a new video.